Good morning, everybody. I'm Ann Koontz. Thank you so much for joining us. I have today a special guest that we wanted to feature and bring on for you guys today. We wanted to talk about what insurance policies cover, what they don't cover, and how people kind of get snagged in the aftermath of last year's storms, which everyone is sort of tired of hearing about. But we learned a lot. And one of the things that I want to make sure that we learn about is what to expect in the homeowner's insurance policy and how the insurance companies behave in the wake of a claim. My guest today is Nigel Bogaert from 5 Star Adjusting. They are insurance claims adjusters, and we'll hear a little bit more from Nigel to hear kind of what that even means, what kind of job is this, and why do our clients need someone like this in the times of a claim. So thank you so much, Nigel, for joining us. I really appreciate you and sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joanne. I really appreciate it. I'm super glad to be here. I know we're in the midst of another hurricane season, and fingers crossed, it is not on our coast if it does come over, to the West Coast. Hopefully, it's a different coast if it does come, though.
Yeah. So tell us just a few minutes, a little bit about yourself. One thing I do want to say is you've been a wonderful wealth of information you've shared with our real estate realtor partners and with our team in our office. So we wanted to bring you and give you access to help our clients and referral partners as well. So thank
Yeah,
you.
I appreciate it. So yeah, Nigel Bogaert. I'm a Floridian, born and raised at a St. Petersburg, Florida. I know there's not a lot of those around, but
No, I feel like we should put you in a museum.
we started the company 19 years ago after Hurricane Wilma, which is a massive storm that hit South Florida. And in 2006, we got our license, which is called a public insurance adjuster's license. And so that license is very much and very similar to what the insurance company adjusters have. Either the desk adjuster who's sitting behind a desk who never sees your property, or the guy that they send out to look at the property. Those individuals have to be licensed through the Department of Financial Services. So our license is only to represent the property owner, residential and commercial property claims against the insurance company. So ultimately, our job over the last 19 years is to kind of level the playing field, if you will, against the insurance company by representing the homeowner's best interest at the property. Whether it be documenting the claim, reviewing the policy, meeting the adjusters, ultimately negotiating the claim to get what's fair for the property owner at the end of the day.
And probably doing a fair amount of translating. There's language that is completely unfamiliar and words that are used in different ways. One thing I do want to mention for our audience, Nigel is going to have a nice conversation with us. If you have questions for him, I'll be happy to monitor them and present them to him. You can use the chat button at the bottom of the screen, and I'll certainly, pardon my interruptions if I interrupt you with questions, please.
Good. Well, I welcome them to be interactive to keep this thing fun too. So whatever it is.
Can you start with a little bit of like, what are the unknowns? What's the backstory? How do people get into these in this territory where they don't even know where to start to begin?
Yeah. So
What do you not know before the storm?
yeah, well, I guess the policy is probably the most difficult component. I think that, it's a contract between you and the insurance company, and that contract is generally 70 pages long. Most people have their declaration page, which is 2 to 3 pages long. And so my biggest piece of advice to anybody and everybody is make sure you have more than your declaration page, because when there is a claim and there's a need for somebody like myself, having the complete policy in your possession will save time, because that policy has so many limitations, exclusions, forms, endorsements that really spell out, what is actually in the policy and what are the benefits where I can help to maximize the claim for somebody. So I think the policy is probably number one. I think everybody talks about documenting your property, taking photos pre-storm. It's such a big one, especially inside and outside, to make sure you have some lay of the land before the insurance company comes out and says, well, that was already there. It's like, well, no, it wasn't. So those are two huge tips. I think just big picture, like where is the insurance industry and where does it come from and where are we at now? And so I've got this slide I created, which we don't have to look at, but it more or less shows from 92 to today, our premiums have constantly gone up, but the things that were in our policy 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, no longer exist or have been limited. And so I think, to know that we used to have 5 years to file a claim, down to 3, down to 2. Now you have 1, which means anybody that, has suffered damage from Milton, for instance, who hasn't either, inspected their roof because they think they're okay and it didn't leak, or they're still in the midst of working their claim. They have a deadline that's fast that's coming on October 10th. So I think the things they've stripped from the policy, the average person is not going to know that. They shop for price. I mean, let's be
Of
honest.
course.
I mean, it's like, who can I get and what's the cost? But until you have a claim and you look at the policy when you have a claim and you go, wait a second, my kitchen faucet leaked while we we're out of town all week. My $30,000 kitchen and my $30,000 worth of floors are toast, and I've only got $10,000 worth of water damage coverage. That's a big one. And so I think those limitations and things in the policies are probably the things people don't ask when they go buy. Now, I don't sell policies. I'm only when there's a problem or damage, when I get involved. So
Wow, that's massive. You're right. And not only do they not know what's been stripped down, they didn't know what was there to begin with, right? So average, I mean, I'm a lawyer and I'm guilty as charged on like what's in the insurance policy, who knows, but it is easy for folks, especially when they're comparing, you know, one broker to another, one policy to another, and they don't, those are, it's hard to even read that stuff ahead of time, even if you wanted to. So that's really helpful. So can you talk a little bit about maybe some more stories, some people that, have had issues that you've seen that we might relate to?
Yeah, I've got I think the foundation of insurance in itself is it's supposed to put you back to pre-loss condition. Where were you before the storm or the water damage or the fire happened? And most people typically don't really recognize, there's a lot more in these policies than there's guidelines for IICRC, which is, when you have water damage, there's certain things that you have to do to dry properly. There's certain things you have to do to remove certain building materials and take certain steps. But the policy in general should put you back to pre-loss. So these things they've stripped out or limited, they no longer allow you really to get back to that place where you were. So we have a good friend, which, she was okay with me sharing her story, who's a realtor. And, after Milton, as an example, she called me out. I went out and I said, look, Eileen, first of all, your policy has a limitation on screen enclosures. It has a limitation for water damage. So you need to probably look at another policy in the future. And when I looked at the damage, it just seemed so clear cut. And I just said, I kind of help you on the peripheral. I think you're going to be okay. And within 2 weeks, she called me and she's like, Nigel, I need you. And so
Wow.
I jumped in. Her first check was $2,300. And I think we closed the claim out in the gross claim was a little over 100 grand. And they just got their check maybe 6, 8 weeks ago. They switched adjusters 4 different times. So they paid the two
The
grand.
insurance company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They paid the 2 grand, closed the claim. The engineer missed the inspection when I went out there. They switched to 3 different adjusters. And to me, obviously, a lot of these things that I see seem so clear cut and evident. And the documentation, I think we had 327 photos, 3 videos. All of this I had presented in a line by line item estimate to the insurance company, with a formal declaration of the claim. And it was, generally there's 3 Ds that we talk about: delay, deny, defend. I tell every homeowner, I said, it's fast or fair. It's never both,
Yep.
but the insurance company in the state of Florida has 60 days to make a coverage decision or a payment. believe it or not. So they don't have to give you a check immediately. They don't have to make a decision. They can do their investigation, and by 60 days, that's when they're supposed to make that payment or, decide we're denying you or whatever that looks like. So
So when you hear people who are still in the throes of settling up after the storms from last year, and it's been nearly a year, is that 60 days extended by any dispute or, um, hey, they said this and now we've challenged it, or how
yeah,
are these people still not paid this long later?
I,
Or is
I,
it maybe the time frame they made the claim?
no, I mean, no, it could be people who filed the claim right out of the gate. Just, I honestly, I have a house in Palm Sola Bay, that I literally just got my check a week ago, and I'm a public adjuster. And I mean, and I had 300 plus photos. I had to do an EUO. I hired my own engineer, $3,500 to fight the case. I had to get an attorney to file a complaint. And I mean, I just closed it out for 83,000, and I still have interest that's owed and loss of use that's owed. So like probably another 10 to 20 grand that they owe me. So I mean, no, it's very typical, unfortunately, and I feel like I do a great job. It's just it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, what I think most people don't recognize, and some people wait to get us involved. And the problem is that if somebody goes out and they do it on their own and they get a check for 3 grand, what did that really cost them if I would have been in from day one, number one. But number two is that once they close the claim out, now if I bring in new information and write an estimate, the insurance company's clock starts all over again. They got another 60 days to now investigate this new information. So a lot of people waited, and the insurance companies have done an amazing job post storm at telling people, go get 5 estimates for your roof, regardless of what the damage looks like. And then they're using those estimates, if they pay down the road, to negotiate against themselves, to where we write the estimate and kind of we're telling the insurance company what they owe, as opposed to homeowners, you know, hoping that whatever the insurance company tells them they're owed is fair. And our job is to tell them what's truly covered under the policy. So
That's insane. I
it was,
mean, sadly, it's the norm, and there's lots of reputable companies out there, and it's not probably good versus bad. Would you, or do you find that there are carriers that are better? Do you have a good list and a bad list?
I do have, I
Anything
do
you're willing to say
I do.
publicly?
Yeah. I don't mind. I mean, listen, this is my own personal, this isn't a dig. I'm not talking bad about insurance companies, but I mean, we've got 85 adjusters throughout the state of Florida. So we are all heavily in communication. So we kind of have our finger on the pulse of which carriers are doing what policy is changing. And to be able to share that with each other is huge. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
With or
They
without Aaron Rodgers?
they have become very difficult over the last 3 to 5 years, especially with roof claims, even water claims. Like the biggest denial or underpaid thing that I see is on a roof claim, they'll open up coverage sometimes, but then they just will disagree with paying for the entire roof. And then it takes months to get them to do the right thing. With water claims, if they can find a way, most of these insurance companies have language in their policy that says, it says if your leak has been ongoing, even hidden for longer than 14 days, they'll deny the claim. And a lot of these carriers are just saying, oh, well, that's behind the wall. And based on what that looks like, it could have been happening for longer than 14 days. And they're denying fresh water losses. So State Farm also has language for dispute, right? If there's a dispute between us for your claim and the insurance company, we have some options to settle. We have mediation, which is done and is non-binding. We have appraisal in some policies, which is basically 2 appraisers and a third party umpire, and we kind of remove it from the insurance company adjuster, which is amazing. But State Farm's language only allows you to more or less appraise whatever it is they've acknowledged. So if they acknowledge 1 shingle, I can only go to appraisal and appraise for this 1 shingle. I can't appraise the entire loss, which defeats the whole purpose of
Purpose.
appraisal. So there are claims that end up going to litigation. We try to keep them out of litigation. That is not our MO to sign and flip. It's to sign and work it and get to a reasonable settlement. So we try to set good expectations with our clients with that on the front end.
Anybody that you would say, if you've got a policy with this underwriter, this is probably gonna end better?
And better, yeah. So
Not be problem free. This is
yeah,
not like walk in the park.
yeah, I would say, Allstate, Progressive, Cypress, Florida Family. Although Florida Family has this new 1% matching endorsement. So, geez, oh Pete's, they've added this over the last couple of years to a lot of policies. If your kitchen cabinets, your lower kitchen cabinets, upper kitchen cabinets, and your floors get water damaged, and even though you cannot match the floors that run through the rest of your beautiful home, or your cabinets uppers don't match, they've capped how much they'll pay for the undamaged matching portion. And usually it's somewhere between only like 5 and 8 grand for the matching portion, which wouldn't cover
For the whole rest of that floor?
correct, or the whole rest of the upper kitchen cabinets.
Wow.
And it kind of goes against the Florida statute. There's actually a statute 6269744 for insurance that actually speaks to matching, like, kind, and quality. And so the policy unfortunately overrides the statute to some degree. There are ways around some of it, depending on how the materials are installed, what type of demolition has been done. But yeah, so sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent on that, but
No, that's great. That's part of the surprise, right?
yeah, those are one of the surprises in the policies. So yeah, Cypress, Allstate, Florida Family, Progressive, I have on my house. Frontline, I have on my house over in Palm Sola Bay. Obviously it drug out. They did pay, but they do have appraisal. And they do have a 1% matching that's embedded in the policy. It's not an endorsement, so that's tricky and you have to keep an eye out for. But I would think those are probably top 5 or 6. Chubb,
Wow.
Chubb is difficult to get these days. And they've changed their tune, but generally a good carrier as well.
Okay. Wow, that's really helpful.
Yep.
So you mentioned this 1% matching. Any other unknowns that we should be thinking about talking to our insurance agents about when we're shopping to say, yeah, this one might be cheaper, but what are the few things I need to be looking for?
Sure. I think, okay, yeah, those are good questions. So there's a ACV roof schedule, which is called a roof endorsement schedule, which means I have a property in Siesta Key, hurricane claim just got settled. Um, Probably an $8 million house with a $150,000 roof. The ACV roof schedule on there, because her roof was 15 years old, they depreciated the roof by 68%, and it's non-recoverable. So most policies have recoverable depreciation, which means if the roof is valued at $100,000, they'll depreciate it normally over a course of 30 years on a tile. But if you spend the money, you can get the money back. On this particular, yeah, so if you have $100,000, they'll hold back, let's say 50% of it. And then once you incur the cost, they'll give you the rest. That's the depreciation version. The schedule that they have, these roof schedules that are popping up in these policies, they'll depreciate it and it's non-recoverable, which means you just do not get the money back, period. So that's new over the last couple of years. It's popping up in policies. The 1% we talked about, managed repair programs, and right to repairs. So a lot of these carriers are taking on, they're not just an insurance company anymore. They're forcing you to use their own contractors. So
Really?
instead of you being able to, you file a claim, you say, this is my loss, this is what you owe me for to fix. They're saying, in lieu of a check going to you as the homeowner, we're going to send it to our contractor and let our contractor, who you have no idea who it is, come into your home and do the work, which to me is a huge conflict of interest. And these contractors are, they're messing up jobs, especially on interiors. They're saving a buck, just like some contractors may. And then
Well,
it's
the
like,
busy guys don't want to do this, and the good guys are busy.
so you got it. And so the liability goes back on the insurance company. So it's like they're taking on almost like liability if the contractor makes a mistake. So those, I think, don't, it's hard to properly, indemnify an insured when they have those guys involved, quite frankly, because they kind of take over the mitigation aspect of it. I think mitigation companies and bringing an insurance company's mitigation company out to dry up the water and do mold remediation, I'm kind of against it because they work for the insurance company. They're directed by, they have to get everything approved versus a real mitigation company who's licensed to do mitigation. They should be following the standards of the IICRC regardless. So if something needs to be cut or pulled, they should do it as the licensed contractor, not, hey, Mr. Insurance Company, is it okay if I do this? Because if I'm the homeowner, I wouldn't want that. I would want it done the right way without anybody having to get authority.
Which they're probably expecting. I mean, it's why I had good insurance to begin with, right?
Yeah, well, I think the insurance companies have done an amazing job with marketing. They spend billions of dollars. They got some catchy, jingles and logos and tunes. And yeah. So I think those are big ones. And then wind hail deductibles. So some of the normal roof deductibles would usually be $1,000. And now like if you have a non-named storm, for instance, these new deductibles are almost the same amount as a hurricane deductible, and they're adding those in as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit about water with respect to the cabinets. Can you talk a little bit about the different ways that water can cause problems and how the insurance companies handle that?
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, there's different types of loss. There's, if you have a supply line from a faucet, that's a category one water. If you have something that comes from the tank of a toilet, that's category two. If you have something that comes out of a drain, whether it's a shower, a sink, or a toilet, that's category three water. Category two water can turn into category three water, and anything that touches category three is technically supposed to be cut, supposed to be removed, not just dried and left in place because of the bacteria that's in that water. And so water tends to follow the lowest point. So if you
Mhm.
have a leak that's behind a cabinet, or you have a leak that's in a spigot on the outside wall and it goes inside the wall cavity somewhere, it's ultimately going to travel wherever it wants to go. And I think most people, they say, oh, we're just going to set up equipment and once it's dried, it's dried. Well, that depends on who documented the water damage in the very beginning and when they found it. If that water's been sitting for, 2 to 3 days, then right off the back, in my opinion, you're getting some form of mold testing or doing some form of exploratory cuts because mold growth can take place in 24 to 48 hours in Florida. So water is super tricky, based on the category of water. Where did it travel? Who documented it? How quickly did somebody even start drying from when the actual date of loss was? And and then it's you look at a kitchen cabinet or whatever, and it's like, well, how do we know it didn't go behind the stove? Did anybody pull the stove? Has anybody popped the toe kicks? Where did the water travel to? Wood floors with water. There's so many types. There's LPV. You got you got glued down. You've got floating. So, if somebody has a vapor barrier that's underneath their floor and water got on the ground, well, you can't dry through the vapor barrier and through the floor. You have to pull the floor of the vapor barrier to dry the slab. You would never go back and put fresh wood floors or fresh floors down on a wet slab. So a lot of people don't think about drying the actual slab as part of the mitigation, when it comes to those things. So yeah, there's a lot to water.
Glad we called.
Yeah,
This is terrible.
yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to paint a scary picture.
Yeah.
It's
No,
what,
it's helpful to know now, though.
yeah,
Then you put the new floor on top of the wet slab, and 5 years from now, you have a problem. And
yeah.
nobody wants to hear about it then, right? Like you're
Oh,
ripping that up and fixing it yourself because you didn't fix it right the first time, right?
yeah, it's the same thing with roof leaks. I mean, roof leaks, we see the stain, but it's like, okay, we saw the stain, but is that where the water came down from the roof? Did it travel to the wall? Did it come down the wall? Did it go down the baseboard? Did it hit the floor? Um, you know, I think, and I'm just going to sidestep real quick when we're talking about roof claims and water damage, but really the insurance company wants to see almost like a meteorite, came through your house, caused a gigantic hole, and that's how the water got in. Many of these policies, wind-driven rain from wind and water from rain coming through the stucco or the window, that is not covered. Any sort of water that is coming through your slab or through your stucco that's called seepage or groundwater, meaning it's probably happening over a longer period of time, also not covered, not even in the flood policy. So I get a lot of calls and it's like, hey, I've got water. I'm like, well, where's it coming from? And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, that's step one. Whether we need a plumber or leak detection company, we have to stop the leak. We have to find the leak. I can't call in a claim to the insurance company and say, hey, I've got water damage. Well, that's not covered unless I have a covered peril that's in the policy. So I need to track down and direct a lot of homeowners. I say, get the plumber, get the leak detection. Don't throw the part away. I need the report. We need to stop it because I don't even know if you have a claim here. Why go file a claim if there's no claim? Now you're just getting red flagged for the next time you go do a renewal or go buy another property. You've got this, red mark on your file. So I try to prevent people from filing claims that don't need to file claims as well.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned documenting, and I think you were talking about documenting on the front end, like before the storm comes, take a picture, what it looked like, what you had, etc. Correct?
Yep.
What about we just had this roll through and people are waiting for the insurance company, adjuster, whatever, to come out and inspect, but your things are getting moldy and disgusting. I've had clients say they told me not to throw my things away, even though they're clearly and like they're almost becoming like a biohazard in my house. What's your position on that with respect to how can they help you have the best um, argument at the insurance company? Do you need that stuff there, or is a picture okay
Great
of
question.
damage or things?
99% of what you're speaking to is going to be flood related.
Okay.
Um, I've had clients where I walk up and they've got appliances out by the road and I'm like, whoa, wait. We have to actually get the model number. We've got to take a picture of the flood line. So one of two things, obviously, if we get involved out of the gate, either we come out and we document the contents, and or we have content companies that come out for a fee that'll do all the documentation. The sooner we get the documentation of it all done, the sooner we can kind of get rid of it. As long as we have good photos, we have model numbers, we have watermarks, we don't necessarily need to save those. And some people probably understand that, and people that are kind of going through a big flood for the first time don't. I grew up in Shore Acres in St. Pete, and that place is probably flooded 15, 20 times, since I was born and raised there. And when you drove through there after this flood from Milton and Helene, everybody already had everything out front, because it's already either been documented or they knew what steps to take.
Ah, these are seasoned pros.
Yeah, yeah. They've flooded multiple times. So I think you really have to, either have a public adjuster, the contents company, somebody to document it and just go ahead and start getting it out, because generally you're not going to have power. Even if somebody sets up equipment to dry in a flood situation, it's not going to dry the soft, and hard goods anyways.
Hmm. We do have a question. Tracy says, as a consumer, am I entitled to an explanation as to why specific claims are denied when you, as the adjuster, are working with the insurance adjuster for the company? How do I know why so I can protect myself from by changing coverage for the next time if necessary?
Yeah, so if you've been denied by an insurance company, there should be a letter that comes out, and it's either going to be a partial or a full denial. And what they will do is they will state language from the policy. They'll copy paste the reason they're denying it, and then they'll copy paste the policy language for the denial. So that doesn't mean just because you've been denied, it was rightfully denied. It just means that was their take. A lot of these insurance companies are using bots and AI right now to deny claims. There's no doubt about it. And the ambiguity that might be in the policy, who's reading that? The insurance company, whether it's the bot or a human, is making the decision from some desk somewhere to deny the claim based on something they saw, something you said, and they're denying the claim. So then it's a numbers game. Out of 100 people, are 20 people going to fight it, the denial, and the other 80 are going to walk? And the area I see most people make mistakes on claims is the first time they call the claim in. When they call the claim in, it's called the first notice of loss. That first notice of loss follows the claim from day one through litigation. If you file that claim and you've got a chatty Cathy, you say a little bit too much, you don't say the right thing, you don't keep it simple. They're going to use that on that coverage decision right out of the gate. And then 2 weeks into the claim, they're going to do a recorded statement. And now they've got you recorded on a call from when you called it in. They're going to prep questions to call you on this recorded statement and record that with your permission. And if there's anything in between those two things that they can utilize or dig up to potentially throw the claim off or deny it or use it against you, you at that point. So yes, the denial letter should in fact state why. I would have somebody review the denial and just look
I
at.
was going to say, can you even read that? Like the average Joe, is that even something you can?
No, because there might be something else in the policy that overwrites that. I mean, there's special provisions that overwrite special forms, endorsements that write over parts of the policy. Did somebody just get something wrong? There's so many reasons why it could be denied,
So what's the first place they should start? Should they call their trusted insurance agent who they bought the policy from to work through that before they say anything? Before they go to someone like you?
No, I would probably just say call a public adjuster and have them look at the policy, look at the denial, and have a candid conversation. I mean, it costs them nothing to do that. So it's literally I would get the information, we would look at the information, ask questions about the claim, figure out why they're trying to deny it. If I don't know if there's a way around it or not. And then if it seems like it makes sense, then at that point, that's how we get paid. We invest our time and take a risk to help homeowners to maximize the claim. And the way that we work is we work on a contingency. So if we don't get anything, we get nothing. So the phone call they make for us to review costs nothing. If I get involved and I get them nothing, I get nothing. So I want to make sure there's an opportunity for me to invest my time to help somebody. And listen, I'm willing to take, a swing, I think there's a shot. But certainly we want to make sure we have our ducks in a row. And we have a good case to present.
So, as a takeaway today, what would you say homeowners can do to arm themselves and be prepared as we walk into this hurricane season?
Yeah, I think besides having the policy and taking some photos, doing any sort of repairs that haven't been done, little things that need to get done, caulking the windows, silly things like that. I think having somebody in your pocket that is somebody like myself, whether it's me or another public adjuster, somebody you can call, have the policy ready, somebody you can call to look at the policy, look at the claim. Does it make sense? These deductibles for hurricanes are high, right? So it's like, does it make sense? I got an $8,000 deductible. My roof's 12 grand. Do I file the claim or do I just come out of pocket, the money and do the work? So certainly have somebody like us that's in your pocket that you can call to be able to review the policy and the damages. If you have a denial, we can get involved in any step. I prefer to be involved from very beginning so that I can set the stage, if you will, and I call the claim in. I present the claim. I meet the adjuster. I'm documenting the water and the damage from day one because we use thermal cameras and moisture meters. These guys that come from the insurance company, the adjusters that are like us, they do not carry thermal cameras. They do not carry moisture meters. They're not allowed to pick up shingles or tiles. They're just not allowed to anymore. So, and that's probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, they stopped carrying those things. And I don't need to say why, but I mean, if they've got documentation that lines up with mine, it would certainly help my case and not theirs versus not having it. So yeah, I think somebody like us would be a huge benefit in that. Talk to your agent about your policy, or we can look at the policy. I look at it from a claim standpoint. I don't look at it from price.
Yeah, no, you're like the architect when we're building the house. Like,
Yeah.
but this is pretty. Throw it in. I'm like,
Do this. I want this.
we're $2 million over budget. It's pretty. The builders are always complaining about the architects. Like, you just draw pretty pictures and it's not real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
No, you're right though. It happens to us in the legal world as well. I'm like, when people have a contract, I'm like, the first thing I want to do is talk to a litigator. If you were going to chew this up, you look at it with a different lens when you are on that end of things. So it's really helpful to talk to both, probably the insurance agent and you. But sometimes people come to me. I'm like, look, I'm a lawyer. I don't.
Yeah.
This is not my bailiwick, believe it or not. But it's like anything too. When people do their own legal work or their own taxes or, paint the wall. It's not straight like it would be when the professional does it. So it's nice to know though that it's such a low risk. There's no investment in terms of, money to have you take a look. There's really no reason not to get somebody involved right out of the gate, because it can only go up from there.
Yeah, I would think most people, from an objection standpoint, it's like, uh, it's gonna, I'm a trust the insurance company. They're gonna do the right thing. Your fee is so just to speak to my fees to
Yeah.
talk about it, the way that we work on a contingency, when it's a hurricane, the governor puts in what's called a state of emergency. When there's a state of emergency, every public adjuster in the state of Florida is capped at 10% for the first 12 months. When that cap is lifted, or if it's a water claim or fire claim, we receive 20% of whatever we recover after the deductible. So we're not allowed to charge on the deductible. It's against the law. So where I think people get caught is they're like, oh my God, 20%, Nigel, or if 10%, I'm like, listen, you get us at half off, it's a no-brainer. But at 20% even, it's one of those things that my promise is to make sure that the 80% I get somebody is far more than the 100% they get on their own, number one. Number two, I know what I'm looking for. I know the policy. I'm telling them what to pay. I'm negotiating. I'm meeting the adjuster. I'm dealing with the insurance company. I'm doing the proof of loss. So it's like, yes, I'm going to get more, but I'm also going to do all the work that goes in.
Yeah, no, what you save in Advil is is probably worth it.
I believe so. That's kind of how we're structured and how we work. So for somebody to wait to bring me in, let's just say you got your first check was 5 grand and I'm at 20% and I cost you $1,000. Well, guess what? We're already 60 days in. I'm 60 days ahead of the rope because I've already documented. I've got better documentation. I've written the estimate and I'm reopening the claim and I'm pursuing it to try to close it faster through mediation or appraisal versus having to start over in 60 days when you get that check. Now, what mistakes has the homeowner made? And now I have to overturn a denial or I have to overturn something to do, I kind of, it's a lot more cleanup, if you will, down the road.
Are there any mistakes that you can't fix? Like, is there something that, like, if you say that, like,
Yeah,
like the criminal
fraud.
defense lawyers, like, don't
Yeah.
admit it.
No, I think fraud's a big one. People trying to get something that's not there, and manipulating, what is there. I think that's a big no-no. But I know, I mean, for the most part, if your policy period is December to December, and you're like, I noticed the leak in November of last year, well, either we're out of luck, or even you can go back to an old policy, believe it or not. So if let's say you had an old policy, but we're inside the 12-month mark, just because you have State Farm now and you had Allstate, if the date of loss was under Allstate, under that old policy, I can go back in and open or file a brand new claim under that Allstate policy.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
did not know that.
It's all
That's
about the
wonderful.
date of loss and the policy period.
Makes sense. Now, you mentioned the fee structure of how you're paid. Are you paid like from the claim funds, or like are you waiting for the insurance check with them?
Yeah, I don't get paid until the check comes in. So generally speaking, if you have a mortgage company, I don't know if everybody knows this, but if you have a mortgage company, when you have an insurance claim, your mortgage company comes on the check because they have a title and interest in the property. We come on the check and the homeowner comes on the check. We endorse the check, we give it to the homeowner. The homeowner has to deal with the mortgage company, unfortunately. Some checks, if they're under a certain dollar amount, they're not monitored claims, and then they'll get the check back to them, and then we get paid from there. If it's a over 40 grand for the most part and it's a monitored claim, then sometimes the mortgage company will step in and say, all right, send me your contract and tell me when you're halfway done with the roof or done with the roof. We'll inspect and then we'll release another portion or all of the money. So they do play a role in that claims process through their loss draft department.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, I don't get paid until the homeowner gets paid.
This is, I mean, you're like manna from heaven. Where have you been my whole life?
Well, it's
This is
amazing. Look,
like,
19 years, and I'm just mind blown. It's like the one thing we've always tried is to educate the public, and we don't have the Morgan and Morgan money, to be on every single billboard and every single TV. I don't know if I would want that.
I don't either.
I don't know if I want. I don't know if I want that. But yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes people don't even know somebody like us exists or what a public adjuster is or when to bring them in. And so I appreciate you allowing me to help try to educate, people.
Likewise, this is all we're trying to, I mean, we have webinars all the time on topics of things that we don't do because it's important for our clients and our referral partners to get this information. And even if we can't provide it, I'm happy to to bring that to the audience. It's really rewarding. And last week we had a really popular one and people were calling in and they're like, well, I need Joanne. And I'm like, you don't want me. This is who you want. But we'll make sure that everyone's in good hands. Now, if people need to reach you, can we use the QR code behind you to find your
Oh yeah.
contact
Yeah,
details?
that's actually me right back there. That's my
Oh, look
my
at that. You're so fancy. You do have some Morgan and Morgan money. If I don't have a QR
No, no,
code,
no, no, no.
I don't even know how to do that.
I have an amazing Michaela, my assistant, and I this had nothing to do with me. So
Okay.
yeah,
My Michaela's called Amanda, and I would die without her for sure.
yeah, same boat.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being so kind to share. We do have, opportunity for folks to ask questions here, but if folks have questions after this webinar or something comes up this season, they can reach you and hopefully you can help. I appreciate your time.
Happy to. Thank you, Joanne.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.